In this video, I really want to talk about the fall turnover. Now, I know that we are here at the end of August, but depending on where you live in the country, we're starting to see a little bit more of those colder nights. And so this is typically when you start to see this fall turnover. It may happen for you in the northern part of the country in the next month. It may happen down in the south, you know, in 2 months from now, 3 months from now. So regardless, I kind of want to talk about what the fall turnover is in this video. Also talk about a few ways to really beat the fall turnover, because this can be the toughest time period of the entire year to go out there and consistently catch bass. Now, before we get into all that, this video is brought to you by Fin Fishing Apparel. And right now for the month of August, so just about another week, I am running a big giveaway over at Fin Fishing. Basically, for every dollar that is spent at Fin Fishing, you get an entry into one of 8 different giveaways. So I'm giving away 7 different bait cast rods. These are rods that are in really good condition, the ones that I've used, but I'm just going to give them away instead of trying to sell them. Also, a brand new Arc Gravity 2 reel. Also, anyone who purchases anything right now for the month of August gets a free mystery lure in their package, as well as anyone who gets a USA made sun shirt will also receive a free Bassmaster net gator. So a lot of stuff is going out the door free this month. It's just a great opportunity to buy. But also you can sign up for this by simply signing up for the news letter on the front page of the website as well. But supporting Fin Fishing is the best way to help support this channel as well. All right, let's talk about the fall turnover. Like I said, before we really talk about some tips and tactics as to how to beat the fall turnover, I think it's really important to understand like what the fall turnover is, because some of you have been fishing for a long time, you completely understand it. There's others who have just gotten into the fishing in the last couple of years. They may have heard the term before. You may hear people also talk about a fall transition, and it's not necessarily the exact same as a fall turnover. The turnover is a really specific thing that happens on a lot of the bodies of water that we fish, and it really changes the way that bass act. If you've ever gone from like a late summer like feast where you're catching fish and then it just, I mean, completely shuts down, a lot of times that is the fall turnover. So let's go ahead and talk first about what the fall turnover is. Now, the reason that we have a fall turnover is that because during the summertime, a lot of our different bodies of water, especially those that don't have a lot of current going through them, those that don't, constantly mix all together, they're going to stratify. These lakes are going to basically stratify into different layers. They're going to separate into different layers. So you're going to have a top layer, the middle layer, good night, known as the thermocline, and then the bottom layer. Now, the thing that you should know about this is during the late summer, that thermocline is what we would really consider to be kind of the premium place where bass can be. It's kind of the coolest in temperature. There's also a ton of oxygen in that layer. Now, above that, there's also a lot of oxygen, and so bass really tend to be above the thermocline in late summer. Why is sometimes you can actually be fishing too deep in the summer. You know, we think about summertime bass fishing, we think about deep water fishing, but there are times when those lakes stratify where you're fishing in 25, 30 foot of water and the thermocline is in 15 or 20 foot, and there's really not a lot of fish that are going to be feeding in that bottom layer because there's very little oxygen, not really enough for a bass to survive long term in that area. So really, that's the first thing you should know is what that lakes stratify. They separate in the summer. Now, basically what happens is that when you start to have these colder nights, which here in Ohio, we're starting to see some colder nights come up. When you start to see these colder nights, that top layer is really going to start to cool down. So instead of being a very warm layer on top and a very cold layer on the very bottom, that top layer is starting to cool off. And as it cools off, it's eventually going to hit a place where that top layer is the same temperature as that bottom layer. And when you hit that point, the lake more or less flips, or what it really does is it just kind of all mixes together. Now, if you think about when all this mixes together, not only the layers mixing together, but the oxygen is really going to disperse throughout the entire lake. So instead of having oxygen that is primarily in one part of the water column and not in a huge part of it, it is now throughout the entire water column. And so what this does as well, bass can now be a little bit of anywhere. They can be really, really deep. They can be really, really shallow. They can be all over the place. And so what I've seen, one of the biggest issues with a fall turnover, it's not necessarily that bass are feeding less, although I do think that they do because of a lower overall oxygen content. I really believe that you just have fish that spread out. Like they go everywhere. They're deep, they're shallow, they're on wood banks and the backs of creeks, on the main lake, they are everywhere. Now, include with that during this time of the year, which is again kind of between summer and fall, you also have a lot of the young of the year bait fish that are every year. Young either shad, bluegill, whatever bait fish it is that is in your bodies of water, they are everywhere. And so bass will start to really feed heavily on these bait fish, and a lot of times they're only like an inch long, inch and a half long, wherever that may be. And those bait fish are also everywhere. You will have them in the far back of the creek. You will have them all the way on the main lake, on a flat, in the channel. You will have bait fish everywhere. And so, like I said, the biggest thing that I struggled with for years and years and years when it came to fishing around the fall turnover is that I was always trying to look for groups of fish. And look, groups of bass definitely still remain during a fall turnover. You will definitely still have groups of fish out there, but it just seems like more bass get spread out throughout the entire water column. There is no optimum place for them to be because everywhere is just kind of similar. Now they can still be on some of those old summertime places where you caught them, but a lot of times I think that this really signifies to bass that fall is approaching, let's start feeding up. And so sometimes there is just a transition there. And the biggest thing that you should remember as a bass fisherman is that anytime fish are in transition, again, it's not that they are not biting, it's that they are spread out. If you think about pretty much every day of bass fishing that we have, depending on the body of water, they are all fairly similar in the context that a lot of times in the morning time you will catch fish really well, and then not all the time, but a lot of times when you're on the water, there is a lull between like 9, 10 o'clock and like 1 o'clock. And what it is in my mind is not necessarily that the fish stop biting, it's that the fish are transitioning from a morning type deal to an afternoon type deal. And during that transition, they're a little bit more spread out. They're a little bit more concentrated on getting to that next opportunity, and they're not as easy to catch. So the same thing applies on a grander scale when you have the fall turnover going from summer to fall. It's not that the bass don't bite, it's that they are just more spread out. And so all of that really, to me, what I found out over the years is that during a fall turnover, I have learned personally that it is best for me to fish shallow water. I like to fish deep. I like to fish offshore schools of bass. And like I said, I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. But what I have found to be more successful during this time of the year, the fall turnover, real late summer, early fall, is to pick up topwater baits and just freaking go. And what I mean by that is you are not concentrating a lot of times on where you're catching bass, what cover and structure you're catching bass. I am literally just picking up a topwater bait and going all over the place. And even when I catch a fish, I'm not always concerned about constantly duplicating it. And again, if you think about the science behind it all, bass are a little bit of everywhere. So you may catch one off a dock here, you may catch one on a point where there's a little grass clump here. You may catch another bass on a stump in the back of the pocket. You may catch one that's halfway in the back of a pocket. You may catch one on a flat. You may catch one in the middle of the dang channel. You can catch bass a little bit of everywhere. And when I started not trying to constantly duplicate how I caught fish, I started catching a lot more. Now this applies a little bit more to bigger lakes because I know that I have fished a lot of tournaments during this time of the year and I used to hate it. And now I kind of like it because now I'm not restricted as to where I go fishing. For me, I truly pick up a topwater bait a lot of times and I am just going down the bank. A lot of times it's a whopper plopper. Sometimes later in the year it gets to be a buzzbait. I really like a whopper plopper this time of the year. I don't know what it is. I just have always had a lot of success with a whopper plopper. And it may be a different one for you. Maybe it's a pop bar or a walking style bait. I've just had a lot of success, and I think that the nice thing about a whopper plopper is you can cover that much more water. Like if you cast out a spook and work it back to the boat, you are going to fish it a lot slower. It's going to take longer for a cast than a whopper plopper. So this time of the year, one of my absolute favorite ways to catch them is just fish everywhere with a whopper plopper. Sunshine up ahead, in the morning, in the afternoon, it doesn't matter. Just go down the bank and fish a whopper plopper. Keep on moving. When you catch a fish, just think to yourself, man, that's awesome, I caught a fish. Now, obviously, always cast around that area because bass still at times will be in groups and wolf packs of 2 and 3. But don't always think like, oh, if you catch one on a dock that's halfway in the back of a pocket, don't think you need to go to every dock that's in the halfway back of a pocket to duplicate it. Just keep fishing. Just keep on going. Keep your trolling motor on a constant speed and just keep going. Now, you may see a pattern here and there, but again, I have seen it the best success to just keep going. The one true pattern that I have found during this time of the year, and I talked about it a little bit a while ago, is, well, there's actually really two. One is creeks, where you have a creek coming into a lake. If it is deep enough to get a boat into, those creeks can be really good during this time of the year. And the biggest reason is that the fish in those creeks are not going through the same changes that the fish in the lakes are going through. That creek is not really going to change a whole lot. Yeah, the water temperature may come down a little bit, but because there's a lot of movement in a small river or a creek, it's not like they are flipping. You know, they're not going out there and the oxygen being kind of more or less depleted. It's a very constant thing for them. And so a lot of times creek fishing, it may not necessarily be better, like it may not be amazing, but it's going to be better than a lot of the other lake, if that makes sense. The other thing that I really like to concentrate on this time of the year, and it kind of goes with what I was just talking about with the whopper plopper, is grass. You know, the one thing we know about grass that we learned in 2nd grade is that, you know, your different grasses create oxygen, right? Photosynthesis. And so when it comes to the oxygen kind of being kind of lower throughout the entire body of water, if you have areas that have good grass in them, good green, crispy grass, that's the key. Those places will continue to produce a lot of fish because a lot of fish are there because of the oxygen. There's a lot of bait fish there. You will have a lot of bass there. So those are a couple of things that I really like to concentrate on. Now, again, I think it's really important to understand that I didn't talk about this and I should have. You a lot of times you will be able to see a fall turnover in the color of water that you see. A lot of times when these lakes flip over, there's something about the way that everything mixes together. I have seen a lot of lakes that are fall turnover to be kind of cloudy. They kind of are greenish, bluish at times. And at times, I've even smelled a fall turnover. You can smell it in the air. So anyways, guys, I hope that this gives you some clarity as to what the fall turnover is and a few different things you can do to go out there and catch them. If it did, give this video a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to check out that fin fishing gear. I'll have it linked right here. I will see you guys tomorrow.